we've got a question from, I think, a criminal barrister.
Mr. Attorney, isn't one of the problems in relation to the remandee numbers to do with the Labor Party's tinkering with the Bail Act? You now have prescribed applicants, people who simply can't get bail unless they fulfil special circumstances.
So the explanation at large is the change in the Bail Act. Under the Bail Act, ladies and gentlemen, there's a presumption in favour of bail unless, as the questioner asks, the person's the prescribed person, in which case the presumption is reversed.
Yeah, I don't think it is to do with that, and I'll tell you why. Because those changes were made comparatively recently. They apply to a very small number of offenders. They deal with firearms offenders, they deal with serious organised crime offenders. There are very few people in that category at any given time in the system, let alone in jail. And the other thing is, those changes only occurred in the last 12 months or less. They wouldn't have had time to make any impact on the system, and the problem, as Maury has indicated, has been endemic since at least 1985. So that's not the answer.
So this has been the case since 1985. Mr. Wade, you're the shadow attorney on the 17th or 18th of March, whatever the date is. How do you tackle the fact that we have the largest number, or the highest number of remandees in any jurisdiction in Australia?
I'm sure if I'm shadow attorney general on the 17th of March, I'll be very disappointed.
I'm sorry.
Just to highlight actually how important this question is. In the last year, the remand rate in South Australia increased from 31.14% to 33.54%. Now, if you're considering that it costs $98,924 to house a prisoner, those 52 extra prisoners cost us $65 million. So it's an important issue. I appreciate what the attorney is saying and what the President acknowledged, that it's been a long-standing issue for our jurisdiction. But I would argue that it is a particular crisis now because of the government's failure to properly manage the prison system. The latest data, as of the 9th of January, is that we have 28 spare beds. Now, 28 spare beds in a prison estate of 2,400 is 1.1%. Now, my understanding is that industry standards is you need to have about 5% spare capacity in your prison estate just to be able to manage the flow. And so therefore it's not surprising that we have remand prisoners being housed in G Division in Yarra. Now that is reprehensible. That is the punishment centre in our top security prison. Not only is it a chronic waste of money, but a remand prisoner doesn't need to be treated that way. Obviously, if they've got security issues of their own, they might be placed there. But my understanding is that we have chronic inappropriate placements of remandees. The remand situation has been poor for a long time. It is made worse by government, which is willing to rack, pack and stack. Now I appreciate, I don't want to let you down. I know that everyone knows that politicians have got a statistic for every occasion. The attorney's offered yours about the benefits of the Labor government in terms of education. I've got some stats that question that. My understanding is that vocational education and training in prisons has halved from 50% of eligible prisoners in 2008-9 to 25%. Admittedly, there's been a dramatic increase in basic education, but basic education is useful, but we need to make sure that, as I said before, that we make offenders who are able to be made job ready.
All right. Add something to that. People, particularly those who have been involved in the prison system, would appreciate that basic education is a pretty important element for a lot of these people. I mean, the levels of literacy and numeracy in the prison population are dramatically lower than in the broader population. So, whilst I do take Stephen's point about vocational training being important, if you can't even read or write, that becomes a pretty big challenge.
Mr. Wade, you've given us some statistics, but did we hear a solution? We have the highest number of remandees. What would a government in which you're an Attorney General offer to deal with that?
our policies for the next election will be brought out over time. But let me go back to my past. I was a former Shadow Minister for Correctional Services, and I suggested about 5 years ago, that we should establish bail hostels, so that people who are put on remand because the court wasn't convinced that they had a settled place of abode and could return to court could be placed in bail hostels. Tom Constantonis attacked me for and the Liberal Party for being soft on crime. It's interesting the government announced a bail hostel in the last budget. The fact of the matter is, this government, very late on the occasion, considering that we're now 12 years in and they want to make it 16. The attorney wants to start talking about justice reinvestment at the end of a 4-year term. I don't think the government's got credibility on this. They're rat packing state for 12 years. I don't think they'll change.
I've got a question for something. I mean, look, the thing is that in a month's time or thereabouts, people are going to be asked to make a choice about what we want to see in the state for the next 4 years. What Stephen has been doing tonight, in respect, is trotting out the usual cliches about rat pack and stack, which goes back to Mr. Foley's time, which is now a little while ago. And when pressed on, well, yes, what will you do? The answer is, well, you'll just have to wait and see. The thing is, if all the opposition is prepared to do is swing punches at me, but not tell you what they're going to do, that's not informing anybody. And it's basically saying, we're not going to do you the courtesy of telling you what we're going to do, so you can think about that. We're just going to point the finger at them and criticise. Well, you know, that's a tactic that worked very well for Mr. Abbott, I suppose, and again, maybe they're rolling that out here. But I don't think that's helping anybody here understand what the return of policy is.
Can I take it? Yes. Yeah. First of all, the rack pack and stack is not history. In the last 2 years, the prison population in South Australia has increased by 10%. Foley's been gone for years. The point about the bail hostels is the Liberal Party has had a long-standing commitment to try and reduce remand rates and imprisonment by alternative measures.
Are you going to bring it in? Is that part of your policy?
The bail hostels, as I said before, we support it, and your government supports it.
So you're good with that?
And in terms of home detention, we have maintained home detention through Liberal governments in the past. And I noticed that Mr. O'Brien, your recent predecessor, indicated the government was intending to increase home detention. I think for low risk offenders, home detention makes a lot of sense.
I agree with that.
Just one, before we leave the jails altogether, was there a question before? Yes, that.
Helen Glanville, Prison Fellowship. It seems to me, in very simple terms, that there are two sources of why a person goes to prison. The judge sends them there, but in some cases, and from what I'm hearing, it's the police who are thinking that maybe we need to teach them a lesson. So perhaps when this group of people invested in the criminal justice system actually get together, they could actually assess, really, is this person seriously dangerous to the community? Do they really need to be going to prison? Could it be that there's a suitable address that we could all help to find? Because $98,000 per person is pushing it right up there, surely.
Can I just
And
ask?
so
Yeah.
those two areas need to be put under the microscope as to why there's this incredible percentage.
Can I just sort of tease out your question? Are you saying that police are refusing bail under the Bail Act as a bail authority because a person is entitled to go to a court and ask for bail shortly thereafter?
I'm suggesting that there are certain elements within the police that think that prison's a good option to put them there, because in some ways the police have been short of staff. They're too busy to assess the situation. It's an easy thing to just put them there. They know where they are then.
That is, as Robert has just mentioned, the idea of the police putting somebody in, even assuming that they were acting inappropriately and deciding to misuse their refusal of bail, that is a reviewable decision, as I understand it, very quickly, and that would be rectified by a court. I've not heard anyone suggest that courts are routinely misunderstanding what their obligations are in that respect. So that wouldn't explain the large numbers. It might explain them overnight, perhaps, but not anything else.